All right, committee, we're going to call this to order. Alan, thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Allegra, thank you. All right, good morning, folks. I will call the meeting to order, and I begin by acknowledging that we're in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional, the unsurrendered land of the Mi'kmaq people, and the peace and friendship treaties dating back to 1720 are important to us. I'll look at the approval of the minutes of March 11th, moved by Councillor Hensby, seconded by Councillor Mancini. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The order of business, would somebody like to propose that? Sure. Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Cuttle. All in favor? All right, giddy up. We have order of business. Business arising calls. I'll call for declarations of conflict. Motions of reconsideration, rescission, deferred business, tabled matters. We have none. Correspondence, Madam Clerk?
No correspondence was received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Petitions?
No petitions from the clerk's office.
Thank you. And no presentations. I'll ask for public participation if anybody wishes to address Executive Committee. Seeing none. Information items brought forward, none. The first item we have is 13.1, and this is 13.11, combating Islamophobia and improving the safety of Muslim women and girls. Is there a presentation on this, Katie? All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to the presentation, and then we'll have discussion. And we have Amy with us. So the floor is yours, Amy Brierly.
Testing. Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Amy Brierly. I'm a social policy strategist in the Programs and Partnerships Division in Community Safety. And I am here to do a presentation on the recommendation report that is before the committee, titled Combating Islamophobia and Improving the Safety of Muslim Women and Girls. I'm just gonna start here. Okay, so as the committee will know, the origin of this report was from a motion from the December 2021 Executive Standing Committee. And the motion was that the Executive Standing Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer to prepare a staff report that investigates other municipalities' work around anti-Muslim hate and racism, and makes recommendations on potential actions to combat anti-Muslim hate and racism, particularly with respect to women, in Halifax Regional Municipality. So a bit of background on the issue of Islamophobia. So Islamophobia is defined as stereotypes, bias, or acts of hostility and violence towards individual Muslims or followers of Islam in general. Islamophobia can manifest as individual acts of hate, discrimination, and prejudice, and also as systems, public discourse, policies, and practices that perpetuate harmful and discriminatory ideas of Muslim people. Islamophobia is a serious and enduring issue across Canada and continues to have and has had devastating and lasting impacts on individuals and communities. Between 2016 and 2021, more Muslim people were killed in targeted hate attacks in Canada than any other G7 country. And figures released in March 2023 indicate that police-reported hate crimes targeting Muslims increased by 71% from 2020 to 2021 across Canada. And on the screen here, we have photos of the folks gathering to remember the victims of the Quebec mosque shooting in Quebec City, and the memorial of the London family, the Afzal family, who were murdered in 2021 in an act of Islamophobia. So as was noted in the original presentation from Haneen Al-Naman from the Women's Advisory Committee, there is an intersection between Islamophobia and gender. And so Islamophobia intersects with other forms of discrimination, including but not limited to sexism, misogyny, anti-Black racism, and xenophobia. In a 2023 report from the Standing Senate Committee on Human Rights, the committee noted that gendered Islamophobia is one of the most common forms of Islamophobia in Canada, and that Muslim women and girls who wear visible indicators of their faith, such as the hijab or the niqab, experience increased vulnerability to acts of discrimination and Islamophobia. So to prepare this report for the committee, staff conducted the following in their research. So there was a review of the National Council of Canadian Muslims recommendations to the Emergency National Action Summit on Islamophobia, a jurisdictional scan of the work that other municipalities are doing to combat anti-Muslim hate, engagements with Muslim women and girls across Halifax, and a scan of municipal efforts already underway to contribute to this work. So the jurisdictional scan, we looked at municipalities across the country to see which municipalities were taking action specifically on Islamophobia and which were taking action that were focused on Muslim women and girls. And so some of the things that we found in the scan, some of the common approaches that municipalities are taking are collaborative public education campaigns, support, whether that be collaborating or providing grants and other funding for community-led initiatives, focused on anti-racism, safety, equity, inclusion, and building connections across communities. Accessible and culturally responsive reporting options for hate incidents and crimes. Consistent public condemnation of Islamophobia by elected officials and senior leadership. Forums where Muslim communities and municipalities can work together to identify issues of Islamophobia and co-create action plans and solutions together. Strategic plans that expressly address Islamophobia or that broadly address racism and discrimination inclusive of Islamophobia. And initiatives that address the intersection of gender-based violence and Islamophobia. And this is just an example here on the screen of one of the campaigns that Toronto has run, the public education campaign, Toronto for All. So this is one example of what another municipality is doing on this front. So one of the really key parts of preparing this report were the engagements with Muslim women and girls across Halifax. And so in preparation of this report, nearly 100 Muslim women and girls across Halifax shared their experiences, insights, and perspectives in engagement sessions hosted in collaboration with the following community partners. So Halifax Central Library with support from the Pakistani Canadian Association of Nova Scotia, Kearney Lake Masjid, which hosted both a women's and girls session, Dartmouth Masjid with support from the Bangladesh Community Association of Nova Scotia, and Al Baraka Masjid. And these sessions were co-designed and led by consultant Rana Zaman, who led efforts to ensure the sessions were safe, inclusive, and accessible to diverse women and girls. And of course, the community partners who supported the sessions were crucial to making these engagements happen. Across the engagements, participants shared experiences of witnessing or being targeted by Islamophobic acts and generated ideas for action that could contribute to safer, more inclusive, and accessible municipal public spaces. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of those folks who came out to the community engagement sessions, because without their insights and perspectives, we wouldn't have been able to understand what possible actions could be taken in our context in Halifax to make public spaces more safer and more inclusive for Muslim women and girls. So I'll just briefly touch on some of the key things that we heard from the engagement sessions. So we heard from participants that to make public spaces, municipal public spaces, safer for Muslim women and girls and to combat Islamophobia, these are the key insights. So increasing avenues and reducing barriers for Muslim women and girls to participate in civic life, exploring funding for community partners to co-design solutions to hate and Islamophobia. Supporting community-led programming that brings together communities across differences to learn, build connections, and foster strong relationships. One of the key things that participants shared was that to be represented and to see themselves in multiple roles in public spaces is one way of making them feel welcomed and accepted in our public spaces in the municipality. Public education campaigns and resources that debunk harmful myths about Muslim communities. Developing other options for reporting experiences of harassment that meet the needs of Muslim women and girls, diverse residents. Providing training and resources to staff to be able to recognize and respond to Islamophobia. Ensuring that actions to address Islamophobia are reflected in the municipality's safety plans, anti-racism and anti-hate efforts. Ensuring zero tolerance for acts of Islamophobia in municipal public spaces. Establishing initiatives that support Muslim women and girls to feel safer accessing public transit and to feel included in aquatic and recreation programs. Considering and reflecting the needs of Muslim women and girls in the design of municipal facilities. Ensuring resources are available in the diverse languages that Muslim women and girls speak. And similar to the earlier point around representation, establishing efforts to recruit, hire, and retain Muslim women in roles such as police, fire, parks and recreation, transit, and Halifax public libraries. So as part of the research, we also scanned what efforts are already underway in the municipality. So as you folks know, there was a council resolution on January 25th, 2022 that regarded opposing legislation that restricts or prohibits rights and freedoms guaranteed under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There's quite a bit of work being led by Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency and Halifax Regional Police alongside partner Umma Masjid to build relationships and to provide opportunities for staff to learn more about Muslim organizations and communities that they're serving in their work. Of course, we have the Diversity and Inclusion Framework and Champions Table, the implementation of the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces Program, the Public Safety Strategy, the Anti-Black Racism Framework, diversification of Halifax Public Libraries collection, intercultural competency training development and rollout that's being led by Diversity and Inclusion, and then business unit specific actions to make workplaces more welcoming to Muslim employees. So we know that different teams across the organization are doing things like establishing quiet rooms for folks to pray during the day, planning events during Ramadan, those sorts of things to make a more welcoming and inclusive workplace, and the multilingual policy that's currently under development. So looking across the jurisdictional scan, the work already underway in the municipality, and what we heard from engagements with Muslim women and girls locally, we found that there are municipal efforts underway that do align with the actions identified in the Emergency National Action Summit on Islamophobia, the jurisdictional scan, and those local engagements. And that these initiatives are critical and do contribute to combating Islamophobia and supporting the safety of Muslim women and girls, but that the municipality lacks a coordinated and coherent approach to this work across municipal business units. And so there was a need identified to develop an intentional, strategic, and collaborative approach toward combating Islamophobia and the disproportionate impact it has on Muslim women and girls. So as you folks will see, the recommendations coming forth out of the report are that it is recommended that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the CAO to strike a working group of municipal staff to create an action plan to combat Islamophobia and improve the safety of Muslim women and girls, incorporating the findings from this report. Direct staff to explore potential sources of funding from provincial and federal government to support this work, and direct staff to return to Regional Council to provide a supplementary report on progress made and resources required for implementation of the action plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy, very much for that. I appreciate that, and it's nice to see some members of the community, including the consultant. Rana is here with us, and others. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and to be part of this work. We appreciate your commitment. I'll go to Councillor Mancini to put the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put the following motion on the floor, that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that the Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to, 1, strike a working group of municipal staff to create an action plan to combat Islamophobia and improve the safety of Muslim women and girls, incorporating findings from the staff report dated March 21st, 2024. 2, direct staff to explore potential sources of funding from provincial and federal government to support the work. And 3, direct staff to return to Regional Council to provide a supplementary report on progress made and resources required for implementation. So moved.
Second.
Second, Councillor Mason. Councillor Mancini, anything on it?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mason. Amy, thank you for this very important work. Lots of education, I think I heard you say, or you alluded to, that you yourself and your colleagues went through. I have just a few questions. Do we have any actual stats that, at this point in time, that can be shared from a policing perspective of incidents, assaults, and so on? You talked in the motion is talking about funding with the province and the feds. Is there any work being done on the provincial level and actions in support of this or investigation of this type of motion? And then the third question I have, if you're aware, if you know it, is the offenses, the attacks on Muslim women, is there numbers with regard to the youth versus the adults? When I hear stories of in the schoolyard and things of that sort, so is there any information around that at this point in time? But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini, through Mayor Savage, through to you. Yes, so the first question around statistics, policing statistics, do we have any? I think it's, as you folks would know, it's important to note that hate incidents and hate crimes are vastly underreported. And so we do have information, so there are regular updates through StatsCan, through the Uniform Crime Reporting statistics, in terms of looking at hate crime incidents across the city, across the region. I don't have the information specifically of that being disaggregated around which of those, the information is disaggregated for which of those acts would be motivated by hate against religion, but not necessarily disaggregated further around which of those would have been targeted towards Muslim women and which of those would be targeted to youth. Okay. But we have seen, as was noted in the report, we have seen a rise in those police-reported hate crime incidents across time. But yeah, I don't have that information on me in terms of the disaggregation. Okay. And I think we see, I guess, the other sort of supplementary piece to that is that there have been many processes and reports that have been coming out that provide that sort of qualitative information about the experiences of Muslim women and girls across Canada. So the Senate Human Rights Committee was a big piece of that, hearing those stories from Muslim women and girls across the country. Is there any work on the provincial level? Yes, so the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism are doing quite a bit of work around different forms of discrimination and hate, Islamophobia being one of those. And over the last couple of years, they've been going through the process of engaging with communities on various issues in regard to Islamophobia and creating opportunities for, they recently announced some funding for community initiatives around anti-hate and discrimination. So there is work happening at that level.
So it is on the radar then?
Yes.
You're saying it is, okay.
Yes,
all right.
yeah. Yeah.
That's great, Amy. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Councillor Lovelace was on the committee and moved this motion, I think, initially. Councillor Lovelace, welcome back to Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me here today. And thank you, Amy and team. This is good work. I really appreciate how thorough and just how comprehensive staff worked, you know, in a very compassionate way with the community. Really appreciate, Rana, your work to make sure that voices were heard. And I just want to acknowledge Brother Diallo and Sister Rashid for being here today. We do know that without their voices, we wouldn't be able to make these changes. And certainly having the expertise at the table to inform staff and staff's guidance is greatly appreciated. I will say, though, I think we've done a great job with engagement. The next step, obviously, is implementation of education and looking at ways internally we can ensure that all business units have the knowledge that they need in order to work in an equitable manner. That being said, I do think that I just want to include HRCE as an external partner. So, Amy, I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about how we intersect with HRCE, for example, in some of the programming that we support, and as well as with CSAP. We know that Islamophobia, in particular against women and girls, intersects with sexism and misogyny on a wider, broader scale. So I think looking at ways that we are not kind of pigeonholing, right, these particular actions, but actually looking at the broader spectrum of equity is really important. My question, Amy, is number 2. I have to say, number 2 in the motion directs staff to explore potential sources of funding. One would think that we were already doing this work, that we would already be working with our provincial partners and our federal partners to ensure that we have the funding that we need in order to address Islamophobia, sexism, misogyny, and so on. So I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit, are we pushing up towards senior government to suggest, listen, we need more programming, or are we just capturing, what already pennies, I guess, might exist for this kind of programming? Because I would hope that in a way that HRM and all of the other municipalities that are working to address Islamophobia are doing so in a collective voice, so that senior governments recognize the importance of funding this work.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Through Mr. Mayor, through to you, Councillor. So the first question around collaboration with HRCE, we didn't include that in the scope of the engagements that we did with Muslim women and girls locally, although I will say that in every conversation that we did have, there were insights brought up around the need for collaboration with the school system, and so I think the work would be figuring out what falls within our jurisdiction there, and as a partner, as the municipality, what role can we play in taking action at the municipal level that could also support work that might be happening at the level of the HRCE. In terms of provincial funding, so if I'm hearing you correctly, Councillor, you're wondering if there's sort of like a coordinated approach across municipalities to this work, and kind of asking the federal government for support in that. I will say, at least based on my own research, on staff's research for this report, that there is quite a bit of action being taken at the federal level to respond to calls from across Canada from Muslim communities and organizations that have been asking for more action on this front. So the recommendation in this report would really be to take a closer look at what's already available being provided by the province and the federal government, and what we can tap into as a municipality to push forward some of the actions that we're seeing we can take responsibility for as a municipality.
Okay, I would suggest that we include Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities in some of these conversations, because other municipalities across this province are dealing with this, and certainly any idea at this point in any collaboration, I think, is a great opportunity to increase public awareness and public education. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much. Amy, I wonder if I could ask Rana Zaman, who did the consultation, if she's prepared to come forward, and maybe just if there's anything she'd like to add in terms of the work that she did on the community engagement. I think many people are familiar with Rana and the work that she's done in the community over the years. Welcome.
Thank you so much. When you were asking specific questions, I actually asked in the back, I said, would I be allowed to speak and share some of the insights that, as a longtime community member who grew up here since I was 6-7 years old, can really share over the span of history almost. And first of all, I want to thank you, especially, to bringing this forward, Pamela, Tony, you're very familiar with our community and, are very well connected with it. This is so much needed right now. To your question, I can't give you the exact numbers, but I can tell you, and I'm sorry I get a little emotional because when I hear these stories, they come to me of young women being harassed on the bus by groups of people with their hijab being pulled off, humiliated, and no one is doing anything to help them. This is recent. I know it's just a few months ago, and then I say, do you want to come forward? I can make it public. Then they're worried about more backlash. So a lot of these incidents do not get reported because of this fear within our communities, especially as immigrants. Immigrants feel somehow they're not secure in their citizenship. So they don't want to, as my parents used to tell me, don't rock the boat. Just keep your head down, work hard, and and you'll be seen and you'll be a part of this community. But sadly, we are keeping our heads down. In many ways, we are working very hard because this is an opportunity that has been given to us to build a better life. But somehow, instead of being accepted as equals in the communities, we are now being ostracized, we are being attacked, we are made into the other. And adults can handle it much better, but our children are facing it, and it's growing in our local schools. And I grew up here. Back in the day, I used to just call it bullying because, I wasn't black enough to be in the black community and I wasn't white enough to be in the white community. But now it's become a religious thing. It's become an identity. That is why the word Islamophobia has come forward. So it's not about race anymore. It's so much more. So our children need to feel safe, and they're not feeling safe. Many of them are having mental health issues. We've had Muslim suicides. I'm so glad you brought forward, Pamela, that it has to be in other provinces. I can tell you firsthand, New Brunswick is having major issues. There are women there I can connect you to who can give you actual incidents of racism that's happening there. So it's not, let's not blame our little province. It is all across Canada. And I am so proud that our province is, our city is going to do something to say to the women and girls, we see you, we hear you, and we accept you as our community, our citizens, and we are going to do what we can to make you feel safe and belong in this community. So, I can go on, Mike, you know me very well, but I'm happy to answer very specific questions that, others may be, let's say, hesitant in answering. So please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the folks who are here from our staff, folks in diversity and inclusion, as well as Dr. Siciliano and Billy Moore, because we have an obligation to people, whether they're born here or whether they come here. One of the most important and sacred things we can do is keep them safe. And so I'm glad that Amy and Bill are here paying careful attention. And this report, when it's passed, should go to Regional Council for all of Regional Council to have a look at. Ready for the question, colleagues? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Amy. The great work that you do. And thank you to the community. Go ahead.
I had spoken to Amy about this and the recommendation she's making. It is very important, the voices that you bring forward once you approve to have these committees, you have voices that are not afraid to speak up even against the establishment of our own communities, that they speak from the heart and tell you exactly what the political statuses are happening in our community and behind the scenes and the challenges you will be facing and we as a community are facing. So I'm unabashedly, humbly going to request to please allow me to be part of some of these committees and sessions because I will give you those answers. I will bring you the feedback that you need and anything, and Amy was facing this. She was facing walls to make this happen. You can ask her, and I made it happen because there are amazing women behind me that want changes and are willing to come forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you all for being here with us this morning. Okay, we will, folks, move to, we have some in-camera items. Does anybody want to test any of those before we go in camera? Councillor Mason.
Sure, I'll be pleased. Well, first we'll move the in-camera minutes of March 11, 2024.
Seconded by Councillor Hensby. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried.
I'll test 15.2. I move that Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private confidential report dated March 12, 2024, and 2, direct the private and confidential report dated March 12, 2024 be maintained as private and confidential.
Seconded Councillor Hensby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Try 15.3. I move that Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private confidential staff report dated March 18th, 2024, and 2, direct the private confidential report dated March 18th, 2024 be maintained private and confidential.
Seconded by Councillor Cuttle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I've lost track. Hold on one
15.4, anybody? Or
Sure.
We're going to go in for 15.5 in camera, but,
I'll test 15.4.
okay.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated March 8th, 2024, and 2, direct the private and confidential report dated March 8th, 2024 be maintained as private and confidential.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 15.5, I don't think we need to ratify. I guess the idea is we're going to go in camera, but before we do that, I'll just ask if there's any added items or notices of motion. None of those. Does somebody want to propose we go in camera? Moved by Councillor Hensby, second by Councillor Cuttle. All those in favor? Opposed? We will go in camera.